Alright, so I'm about a little under half hour out of Bathurst, heading back home this afternoon. And the weather's been cold, but it's been nice, so I'm fingers crossed that there won't be any snow along the way back. One of the people who was there today, who actually taught at the school, but she lived over at Oberon, she showed us photos and there's just snow all over their house and street, like thick snow this morning out there. I thought I drove a long way to get out to this thing. I was one of the people who driven the shortest distance to get there at 2 hours, because there was a guy from Parks and another guy from Narromine, and it was like they'd driven 3 hours, 3 and a bit. So that was kind of I guess eye-opening for the presenters, that people had travelled that far, and it was only a small group, which was really good. A small group that we all gelled pretty well and were able to talk pretty well about stuff. But I'm so glad that I did take the advice of my other staff member and apply to go to this one, because I got a lot of mind's blown, basically. Mind is blown. The way that Peter and Ruth unpacked our brand new syllabus as a more open and a more broader project-based learning approach to it. It's a lot more holistic than a lot of people approach our syllabuses. Some of the stats and that sort of stuff, like Peter and Ruth both taught me back when I was at uni. When he left teaching, he went into our board of studies and was a senior inspector and that sort of stuff. So he knows his stuff, and he's done a lot of research and things like that, and is very passionate about our area of TAS. And while STEM is the new catchphrase worldwide, our syllabus has been, and our teaching area has essentially been STEM and engineering since the late 60s, early 70s. Through all the different iterations of the syllabus, this one is really like tightened up a little bit in terms of the aim and things like that. The rationale, that's the key word, the rationale of it. There's been a lot of changes to the syllabus, which I think, the way it's set out, I think it will confuse some people, it will put some people on a back foot, but other people it will really open up. It's not as prescriptive, it's not as restrictive. I really liked their approach to really creating it holistically, because it's meant, our syllabus area, or that syllabus area, is really meant to be solving real world design solutions, like problems, and being very problem-based thinking and things like that. A lot of people are thinking that STEM is coding. Yes, coding's in there, and that's why I went to that coding course the other day, and they're giving a lot of training on coding, because people are scared of coding, especially when you're told you have to teach it. And it's going to take a lot of professional learning and a lot of self-learning for a lot of teachers. That idea of a digital technology doesn't have to just be that. This way of being able to holistically grab our outcomes and teach and assess the students a lot more open-mindedly and open-endedly is more than a point, and not wrapping up, not just basically continuing to do things that you've always done but calling it STEM, which I think a lot of people will do because they're afraid of losing out. Excuse me, I'm plugging my seat cushion back in. It's cold again, my feet are freezing. And I know my seat cushion's not on my feet, but I think if my butt warms up I might feel a bit better. I think it's going to be a challenge for me to go back to my staff and try and shake up the way that we could possibly teach year 7 and 8, that I think will be better for the students and ultimately better for the staff, and a little bit more freeing for them in terms of programming and delivering content and teaching stuff that can really engage the students and tap into their interests and that sort of thing. I think when we were first looking at the draft syllabus last year, we were seeing how it was a little bit more open, but taking it at its minimum requirements and saying, well, if we do this, we know we're going to hit everything that we need to. But I think at the same time, that can be a little bit restrictive in the way you want to deliver content. Thank you for being my sounding board here. I'm just getting, as I said to them at the end of the day, after some of that stuff that in his presentation, and the best thing is he's going to give us all the resources. Throughout it, people were trying to write notes, and he was saying, you'll get a link for that, you'll get a link for that, you'll get a link for that. Yeah, Peter is so thorough and so broad in what he was delivering for us, and really opening people's minds to what can be done with every section of the syllabus, because that's what it was. It was an unpacking the syllabus as a whole, because it's brand new, and yeah, it really was like, it's made me, I've been looking at our new syllabus, the final official version of it was published earlier this year after all of the draft iterations that I was a part of that draft writing process, or the draft consultation process, I should say, and seeing the way that it's changed from the very first meetings that I went to early last year, and seeing the way it's come to us as an official document, trying to get you. I think if you tried to get your head around the syllabus without going to any sort of professional development, whether it was this one by Peter or the ones that are being delivered by Dan, our TAS consultant, I don't think you'd go into trying to program for the new year, and that's the thing. Year 7 need to start this syllabus next year. Year 8 the year after. I don't think that you'd go in it so open-minded, and you would. I think a lot of people would still try and just take projects that they've been making for years and see if you can slot them into your syllabus, into the new syllabus, which you could. But when you had the opportunity to do something new, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? So I think as a teacher, you've got to basically be a lifelong learner yourself. I'm starting to ramble. I was next to me and he said, I'm starting to waffle. When I've got so many thoughts going through my head, I think I can do that. So I'm just going to settle in from a cruise home, put on a podcast, enjoy the drive. Should be home by about 6, maybe 5:30. That'd be nice. Thank you very much for coming along on this little vlog, especially if you got to this far of me rambling. Gosh, I'm going to have to edit that. It says 13 minutes of ramble. I'll definitely have to take some of that out. Tell you what though, this drive is nicer than the one out of Sydney last week. Max is able to open up and just travel at 100. That's nice. And I see like, there's one car a couple of 100 metres ahead of me. There's 2 behind me, one's a couple of 100 behind, one's about to pass me on this overtaking lane. I could deal with a commute like this. Maybe not 2 hours every day, but this sort of a road isn't as bad as driving through the city. Anyway, I really am starting to brag one out. Talk to you later.